Oh, hey, CNFers. The frontrunner strides through the dog days of summer. Been getting those nice texts and emails. Turn them into online reviews. Those go a long, long way. Got some nice things coming up in Oregon and Idaho, so stay clued in at Creative Nonfiction Podcast on Instagram or find my newsletters at brendanamare.com. Hey. Also, we got a call for submissions. Yeah, the audio magazine is back. The Mandalorian and his kind live by a simple code, always punctuated by saying, "This is the way." What codes do you live by? What codes were you at one time or another told to live by? Do you admire codes in singular devotion, or do you feel unfairly shackled to a way of life? Has the code led you to the right path or down the wrong? Essays should be no longer than 2,000 words, which is roughly a 15-minute read. Bear in mind that in the end, these are audio essays. Write accordingly. Email submission with codes in the subject line to creativenonfictionpodcast@gmail.com. Original, previously unpublished work only, please. There's cash on the line, so send me your best fully formed pieces and consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/CNFpod to put money in the coffers. That helps keep the lights on here, but also puts money in the pockets of writers. Dig it.
And he said, "Roz, you never put all your eggs in one basket."
Oh man, is it happening again? Did we do it? Another podcast? Podcasts are dead, man. It's a Creative Nonfiction Podcast, a show where I speak to primarily writers about the art and craft of telling true stories. I'm Brendan O'Mara in the flesh. So today we have Roz Chast. You know Roz Chast. And if you don't, quite frankly, I hope we never meet. She's a longtime cartoonist for The New Yorker, whose work is kind of panicky, can be bleak, definitely goofy, and heightened, and wicked smart. She's the author of Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant, Going Into Town, and What I Hate from A to Z. And what brought Roz to the podcast are 2,000-piece puzzles and a 2026 wall calendar published by Workman Publishing. Really cool. You can find those at hachecbookgroup.com. Really cool stuff. Show notes to this episode and more are at brendanamare.com. Hey, there. You can peruse hot blog, tasteful nudes, and sign up for my two very important newsletters, the flagship Rage Against the Algorithm and Pitch Club. Got a flood of new subs to Pitch Club, and it's almost time for issue 4, this with Cassidy Randall, which will be dropping a day late on 9/2. I like to do first of the month, but it's going to come a day late because of scheduling. Let's keep doing it. Maybe there'll be some book pitches and agent pitches, radio pitches, doc film pitches. I might even do a version of Pitch Club where I feature my book proposals and just working through that. It's going to be a long one, obviously, because the book proposal is long. But yeah, it'll never cost you a dime. Someone pledged $25 a month for it, which is pretty awesome. Maybe I'll turn on pledges at some point, but not this day. All I ask is for your permission, because platform is currency. Both are first of the month. No spam, as far as I can tell. You can't beat them. You may also elect to check out patreon.com/CNFpod to throw some dollar bills into the CNFpod coffers. You can earn some face-to-face time with me if you dare. Check it out, friend. And also the first ever AMA for paid subscribers is September 4th at 4 p.m. Pacific time. It's a Thursday. Thirsty Thursday. So Roz, of course, was a joy to speak with. I watched several interviews with her in preparation for this, and I reached out to Dana Jerry Mayer for questions because Dana loves Roz and is a working cartoonist with work for The New Yorker and her own book, Skip to the Fun Parts. She's episode 480. You can check that out. So it seemed like a good shoulder to tap. Roz is a true artist. She paints these Pasenka eggs, which are these dyed eggs with cool paintings on them. She's into block printing now and does some rug weaving things too. I'm sure there's a formal term for it. She was inducted into the Society of Illustrators Hall of Fame in 2019. She won the National Book Critics Circle Award for Autobiography in 2014, and also was a National Book Award finalist for Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant. Her work routinely appears in The New Yorker, and in this episode we talk about the ricketyness of a freelance career, how being an outsider made her a better cartoonist, how cartooning is like being at the children's table for art, aging parents, and her experience on The Simpsons. Yeah, they animated her. Lots of rich stuff here that I hope you enjoy. I know I did. Parting shot on why, yes, we as authors have to sell our shit. But for now, let's cue up the montage. Huh.
It's just calm music and you're just running around trying to find a horse.
Cocaine is so expensive, I don't do it anymore. I ran out of money.
You get rejected, and it's like, well, fuck you. Who cares?
This is going to have to interest somebody somewhere other than me.
You watch the news, and you're like, ah, and then it's like, oh, look, iced coffee.
Exactly. It's those little things that you got to find joy in those little things, because my God, It's bleak out there.
Yes, look, my straw is green. It's a Starbucks straw, and these I feel like my Depression era parents. It's like, it's made out of pretty sturdy material. I guess I'll use this like 15 or 20 times.
Keep it in the drawer.
Years of use, years of, saving upwards of $4 over a couple of years.
Oh my God. That's great. Like when I was listening to some, watching back some of your old interviews, and you're talking about your folks and sort of that hypochondria that was baked into so much. Oh, you brought up lockjaw in one talk, and I remember my mom, she freaked out about lockjaw. If you stepped on a nail and you got tetanus and you get lockjaw, and it just rang so true to me.
Oh yeah, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in southeastern Massachusetts, so outside of Cape Cod. And my mom grew up in Union City, New Jersey, and so kind of like simply kind of lived in a tight quarters, small apartment with her parents. And her brother too, just outside New York City. So she kind of had a similar kind of apartment upbringing that you did, though she just came from a hardcore Italian background, and but yeah, she kind of brought some of that sensibility over to me. Also, a tick like burrowing into your ear and then blowing up in the ear, like that was a thing too.
I like that it's not just that it's in your ear, but that like it somehow blows up in your ear. That's kind of Baroque and and very fanciful. I don't think my parents knew that much about like ticks, because they were such Brooklynites that they heard about ticks, but to them, when we first moved, we had our second kid and we moved out of New York and we moved out to suburban Connecticut. And to them, this was the country. And this is 1990. And my father said, so how many channels do you get up there? He just, he thought that somehow we're in suburbia. We're not out in some rural area. I mean, this is, I don't know. It's really funny.
Yeah. And every little lump or a change in color in her skin, it's like everything was cancer.
Oh,
and
of
it's
course.
just like, my God, it's like you pass that down a generation. It's like no wonder why every time I get a little ache, like, oh my God, it must be shoulder cancer or something. Like, it's insane.
I have had 24-hour cancer more times than I can tell you. Everything is a symptom of something that is very, very dire. So yeah, that's lockjaw, gangrene. I think I was the only 6-year-old in Brooklyn who knew what a metatarsal was, or the popliteal area. My mother used to talk about like the back of the knee, like that weird, if you've ever looked at it, it is really quite peculiar looking. We're probably not meant to look at it like directly. But I remember it was the popliteal area, which is another one of these florid, wonderful kind of words that doesn't, come up every day.
Yeah, it sounds like a bird.
Yeah, popliteal. And varicosities and oh God, I think she probably wanted to be a doctor, but she didn't wind up being that.
It's
Yeah.
in watching some back of some interviews as well. Like I love how you saw yourself as something of an outsider, and how did feeling like an outsider you think maybe made you a good artist and a cartoonist that you would eventually sort of grow into?
Um, I hate to say that the two are connected, but I have to say that most people I know who are cartoonists had and have a hard time just kind of go along and get along and blah, and like, oh well, I took my car to the car wash and then and then we'll have dinner and I don't know whether catastrophist, is that too strong a word? Um, well, I grew, as you said earlier, I grew up in a small apartment. I had two relatively elderly parents, no siblings, and I really had no idea of, what people talked about, how to talk to people, like people my own age. I didn't know what they talked about. It was like such a mystery to me and I remember this from back in like, nursery school, going to nursery school for the first time. Just that sense of like, I have no idea what's going on. No idea at all. And, this just sort of persisted, but also at the same time, I knew I loved to draw. So it was something to do. If like I couldn't play with somebody, then I could draw. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I love how you combine, and I heard you talk about combining the writing and the drawing. Like it's this great marriage of two things you enjoy doing, and for you, are they very much intertwined, or does maybe like one come more naturally than the other, and they feed into each other in that way?
They're very, very intertwined. You might say they're conjoined. Uh, but I do notice that sometimes one has more, like I'm more compelled to draw than I am to write, or sometimes I'm more compelled to write than I am to draw. Like right now, I am going through a very visual phase for some reason. I don't know. I mean, I'm just really I've gotten really into block printing lately, like linoleum blocks,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's I just love it, love, 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 and I love looking at imagery more than reading. So I go through phases of one or the other, and I love looking at graphic novels, which and cartoons, which to me are like a perfect marriage of not only the visual and the verbal, but also hopefully, humor. That's at least that's what I'm going for. I mean, not all
Yeah.
graphic novels are, funny, but the ones I like the best are often funny.
Yeah, well, and so much of what you do is often like single panel or stuff broken up, but then you've written longer, graphic memoirs and stuff of that nature too. When you look to do more like long form cartooning, if we want to use that term, how do you, break it down so that whole process doesn't feel so overwhelming?
Ugh. Well, I have noticed now that I've done three books that each one is different. Each
Mm,
one has a it's not like I've learned how to break down how to do this and now I can go to the second book and it's easier. It's like
right.
starting. So uh, the book I did with my parents, a lot of that was sourced from letters that I'd written to people about it. And actually, when I was putting it together, it was the first one graphic, long form thing I had done, and I had no idea how to do it, and I was kind of freaking out about it. And I was talking to my shrink, and he made this incredible suggestion, which was, "How about chapters?" And it was like I had completely forgotten about chapters, or I had just never even. I had this like panic in my head about like how it had to be one, like I would sit down to do a 1 page or 2 page cartoon, except that it would be like 160 page cartoon or whatever it was. And I'd forgotten about the chapter aspect, which was so helpful because you could kind of complete a chapter, and then if you decided, oh, I think I want, you could move like the whole block, around a little bit. But then the second book I did was sort of different, and then the third book I did was different from that, and now the book I'm working on is different from that. So I'm sure that some people have a way of doing it, and I wish I did, but I don't. I have to just kind of feel my way through it, and there's a lot of false starts. A lot of stuff just goes in the garbage, and eventually, hopefully, it hangs together, and you have a book. That's fingers crossed. I'm holding up 2 crossed fingers. Yes.
Well, that, for a lot of things ending up in the garbage, that is something that a lot of people have a hard time doing, be it writing or drawing or whatever it might be. But it's in that getting through the bad stuff, you eventually get the good stuff. And how have you over the years of your career, cultivated a sense that maybe something mediocre that gets thrown out it's not wasted work because it's really just something on the way to hopefully getting something that's very good, measured against your taste?
It's a good question. I think you have to like look at the big picture and say, is there anything that I would rather do than this? And there really isn't. I cannot think, certainly not in the sort of job or career sense. And even like I would rather do it this way, even with the awfulness of like, spending days on something and then out, and then having to throw it out, than not do it. So yeah, like I guess that's what it comes down to. Like I would rather do this than not do it.
And when you were, coming out of RISD as painting, studying painting and doing a lot of that, cartooning was never, far from your heart, and it was always something you kind of did, but it was like lowbrow for them. And, how did you kind of like stick to your guns with that, knowing that that was something that you truly love to do?
I feel like I was really lucky because part of me was it was just very depressing, and I was kind of angry, and it was all I really wanted to do. I mean, that's what I mean by like I would rather do this than not do it.
Yeah.
Maybe that doesn't sound like a very strong reason to do something, but there was a certain kind of indifference to what I was doing at RISD. Maybe it was partly my fault because I just didn't get that engaged with my teachers, and they certainly didn't attempt to get engaged with me. That I could kind of, if I like checked these boxes, I could do the paintings, I could do what I needed to do. But by my senior year, I was drawing cartoons back, but not showing them to anybody. And then when I got out of school, the painting was just like, I really don't want to do that. This is really, what I want to do.
Yeah, and so that's around the time around, let's say, was it about 1977 is when you
I
pitched the
graduated in
batch to the New Yorker?
77. Yeah.
Take us to that moment. I've heard you talk about it. I would love to hear you articulate it again, of just, that moment of how you became introduced to the New Yorker, art director at the time, and, brought him a batch of cartoons that you're maybe could sell.
Well, it was one of those, absolute shockaroos for me because my parents subscribed to the New Yorker. And of course, I was familiar with their cartoons, especially Charles Addams, but I never in a million years saw my stuff as, for them. My dream, I graduated in 77 and I started taking my portfolio around, and I guess this was, April of 78 was when I sold my first cartoon to the New Yorker. But my dream at the time was to become a cartoonist for the Village Voice, because they published Jules Pfeiffer and Mark Allen Stamety and Stan Mack, and people whose work was very idiosyncratic and narrative, not single panels with a gag line in italic type underneath. And that's mostly what I saw in the New Yorker. And I'd never been to a cocktail party in Connecticut. I don't know if I'd ever been to Connecticut. Well, no, I must have passed through it on the train to get to Rhode Island, where I went to school. But I did not see myself as a New Yorker cartoonist at all. But I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was 23. I called up. When is your drop-off day? When can I take my portfolio? And, you leave it with somebody, and then you go to the next week to pick it up. So I put like 60 cartoons in it. I didn't know, is this too many? Is this too few? What do people do? I have no idea. I didn't know any New Yorker cartoonists, so I didn't have anybody to ask. So I put them all in this envelope, and I dropped them off, and then I went back the next week to pick them up. And I looked for the rejection note, and there was not a rejection note. There was a note from Lee Lorenz, who was the art editor at the time. I mean, he did he was not the cartoon editor; he was the art editor. He did everything. He did the covers. He did the spots. He did the little illustrate. I don't mean he drew them. I mean he edited. He the covers. And it was a note from him which said, "Please see me, Lee." And I didn't know who Lee was. I didn't know anybody. And they buzzed me in, and I went and I saw Lee Lorenz, and I was absolutely terrified. It was also, Lee had an office, and then outside of his office was like a sort of outer area, like a little lounge with a ratty furniture in it, and it was all these old men. They were none of them were under 30. I think that the youngest was maybe 35 or something like that. But to 23, that's just like some indeterminate age of oldness, and all men. And I just thought, if I just kind of just completely, when you feel you really shy and you just cannot stand even existence itself, how you just pull into yourself. And I went in to see Lee, and he pulled a cartoon out, and he said, "We're going to buy this one." And it was Little Things, which was, to me, one of the most personal of the batch, because it was the kind of thing that I draw to make myself laugh, which I don't think anybody else would understand. It's like, you make up a name. I mean, I still do this. I make up lists of imaginary names, or film titles, or just funny words, or just something, so he said to start coming back every week, every Wednesday, and bring in a group of cartoons. And that's what I did, and I did go in person for the longest time. And then when I had my kids, then it got more complicated. And now, of course, it's all done over, it's email. You email in your cartoons. But I just emailed a group of cartoons in last night. So I've been doing this now for a long time. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I've got a little screenshot of the Little Things cartoon, pulled up in front of me too. And what is it you think, when he selected this one, were you out of the batch of several dozen photos where you're like, oh wow, oh, that's the one you chose? What did that mean that he picked that one in particular?
The whole thing was extremely surreal, and I didn't really understand why he picked that one, because, as I said, it was more obscure, it was more personal, it was more private in a way. But what mattered to me was that he said to start coming in, on a regular basis. And I had a sense that, well, this is definitely interesting. Because, when you're 23, your adult life is it's such a big question mark and formless. And, you don't know what you're going to be doing the next week. So this was definitely interesting.
Yeah, with how long did it take you to get another one accepted?
I think it was probably a couple of months. maybe a month, something like that. It
Yeah.
was definitely not the next week.
Yeah.
But I know when I started being published in the magazine, there were a lot of the older cartoonists who were very upset. Luckily, I was 23 and I didn't really like hang around with them, so Lee shielded me from it to some extent. But then he told me later, he said that one of them was so upset that he asked Lee if he owed my family money. Um, but yeah, and I still hear, I mean, I had lunch the other day with a cartoonist who's now 94. And he told me, he said, oh my God, there were some guys who just hated you, and there were a few that were like, well, let's just see, it's new, but there were a lot of them that I think felt really, because I wasn't doing what I liked what they did. I liked that style of cartoon, but it wasn't what I wanted to do, you know. But some of them, I think, it just really bothered them.
Yeah. At what point were you able to bring your more of your sensibility and what you actually did want to do at the New Yorker?
I think that I was so lucky that Lee was really, and he told me. I remember he said, Sean really likes your work, and I didn't know who Mr. Sean. I didn't know who Sean was. I thought it was a first name. I was lucky because Mr. Sean and Lee Lorenz liked my work, and they didn't try to make me be a person I wasn't. They didn't say, well, we like your work, but could you shape it more for the New Yorker? They never did that. The New Yorker has never said anything like that to me. So I feel like they've been extremely supportive of me trying to figure out what this is and how to say it best, and that's, I will always be sort of, I know this sounds so corny, but I will always be shocked and incredibly grateful that I've been given a chance to do that, to figure out what it is I want to say and how to do it best.
You've talked about a Linda Berry quote about the ricketyness of, freelancing, but certainly cartooning. And, at 23 and then going, maybe a month or even a couple months without between one cartoon and the next with the New Yorker, at least. Yeah, let's talk about the ricketyness there. It's, how have you really, I don't know, built a scaffolding in your life so that things maybe that you could endure the ricketyness over the decades? Because like you've said, yeah, it's so uncertain for freelancers to this current day.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Well, I think about something that, things that some of the older cartoonists said to me. One was Sam Gross, sometime in the mid 80s, said to me, and did you know Sam Gross? Do you know who he is?
I
Wonderful
don't. I
cartoonist.
don't.
He did the cartoon. This is probably his most famous cartoon of the two people eating in a French restaurant, and a little frog comes out on the dolly without legs. The frog doesn't have any legs. It's on a little, rolls himself out on a dolly. And it's the greatest. But anyway, he said to me, and he was from New York. He used to be an accountant, then he became a cartoonist. And he had this really, and he said, Roz, you never put all your eggs in one basket. And he's referring, to the New Yorker. Like, you just don't, you have to have other things, and nobody I know, I mean, even back when I started, almost everybody did something else. I mean, people who taught, there was one cartoonist, actually, Leo Cullum, who flew, I think for American Airlines. He was a pilot. But you have to do other things. I mean, I do books and I give talks, and for a long time I did illustrations. I do other projects. I have a gallery, so I have an outlet for, block prints or my embroideries or the Pisanki eggs or hooked rugs or this other kind of stuff that I do. So, yeah, you have to have other things besides the New Yorker. And now more than ever, because, as we all know, print media is, certainly not what it was, even 10 years ago. And there are not the markets for cartoons that there were once. I mean,
Yeah.
the person that the 94-year-old cartoonist I had lunch with was telling me that when he was starting out, there were 55 magazines that used cartoons. And a lot of them were in New York. And the guys would take their portfolio around. They would start at the New Yorker because they paid the best. And then they would go to Saturday Review, McCall's, Ladies Home Journal, all these magazines, and they'd work their way down to Gent. They'd work their way to the men's magazines. That world is long gone. It was gone by the time I started. I mean, there was the New Yorker, and then there was the National Lampoon. I sold to them, oh gosh, Mother Jones used cartoons. Village Voice used cartoons, but not. It's different now.
Even when I talk to writers too, there's the work that you tweet about and then the work you don't tweet about, and often the stuff that gets broadcast, say on social media or elsewhere, it can create a false veneer that that's the thing that's like paying all the bills, but that's just the stuff you're most proud of. Meanwhile, there's
Yeah,
like mercenary work over here. And
yeah,
so like hearing you say that, not putting all your eggs in one basket, is just like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it helps to hear someone like you with your experience to be like, yeah, there's other things that, help keep the lights on. So then you can lean, your creative taste into the things that fulfill you the most, which is, New Yorker cartoons and stuff of that ilk.
yeah, yeah. You have to do a lot of different things to sort of patch it together, and be prepared for. I mean, what do they say? Like, hope for the best and expect the worst. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it's most people I know who do this, everybody I know who is an illustrator or cartoonist, they do it because they really love to do it. It's one of those kind of things. It's
When you're submitting a batch of cartoons every week, and doing that every single week for years, what's the sense of panic that sets in? Where you're like, oh my god, like I got 5 to 10 to set in, like deadlines tomorrow. Like, what do I do?
Oh, the whole thing is just one panic after another. I mean, you get kind of, I wouldn't say accustomed to it, but what it comes down to again is that I would rather do it than not do it. And
Yeah.
that is really the whole metric of this. But yeah, it sucks. I mean, you submit, 6, 8, 10 cartoons every week, and often they don't buy any. I mean, you can go weeks, months, and not sell a cartoon, and then you feel like crap. You feel like, what am I doing? This is so stupid. Maybe my work sucks. Maybe it's true that that worst voice in my head, the one that like just natters on about how much you suck, maybe that voice is right. You can start really making yourself nuts. And yes, the deadline aspect, but to some extent, I like deadlines because I think having, well, I think about something that in Susan Morrison's wonderful book about Lorne Michaels, I still remember one quote. He said, "We don't go on the air we don't go on the air because we're ready. We go on the air because it's 11:30." And so I submit my cartoons not because, well, now I have completed like that. It's this is the deadline. This is I have to. The alternative is to just not submit.
How have you adapted to, say, new editors who come through over the decades, and just being like, oh, maybe Emma likes a style like this, or do you just stay true to your taste?
I don't really. I stay pretty true to my taste because I may be a terrible judge of my work, of what's funny or not, but it's the only voice that I have that I feel like I can listen to. And then, of course, she's the editor, so she gets to pick. But I'm not really good at adapting. I am amazed sometimes when I see people who can draw in all different styles and, adapt and this kind of thing. I'm not. I'm not good at that. I guess it's kind of like being a character actor or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard an interview where you're just, it's some counsel that you've offered is like if what feels right for you, isn't right for somebody, or what feels right for you might not feel right for somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's really true of like finding your own voice and style. But like for like, so when a lot of people I suspect come to you, let's say for advice, like, how do you phrase advice for people who might be aspiring or just like frustrated cartoonists who are kind of in that phase of trying to just get their footing?
It's funny. I feel like it must be so hard right now for young people who want to do this because there are just so few markets. But I think that if it's something you really want to do, you just have to kind of keep doing it. I mean, I know that sounds so lame, and just keep doing it. But that's the only way that you figure out what it is you want to say. I mean, one other thing about the way the New Yorker has it set up with the weekly batch and stuff like that is that, yeah, on one hand, it's kind of like, oh my God, it's like decades and decades of, but on the other hand, it's how you figure out. It's how, it's only by continuously drawing, continuously keeping that channel open of putting your thoughts on paper or, on paper in quotes, because, sometimes I use my iPad. I'm not completely illiterate. Um, it's only by doing that all the time that you figure out what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. Do you want to, change that? Do you want to like the parts that you're weak at? Do you want to like just junk those and do a workaround, or do you want to get better at those? It's so much completely up to the person that giving advice in some ways is I'm not really good at that. I would say that you have to really listen to yourself. Listen, what is it that you think? Because what's right for me is not going to be right, not necessarily going to be right for you. What it really is you have to put in the time and you have to work, and that's kind of, and maybe you also hate to do everything else, so that helps. I mean,
Yeah.
I just really, I hate to drive. I hate to exercise. I have no interest in gardening. I have birds. I don't have, this is, I don't have that many other things that I like to do besides this.
The thing with advice is it almost always defaults to, your own lived experience. And for the most part, it's so unreplicable, for everybody. Like a previous generation, like the certain avenues that you came up with are the footprints aren't there. So like how does someone coming up now break in? And it's like there are certain timeless things that you can lean on. And I suspect, yeah, I've heard you say, trying to find meaning in your work. I think that is important too. Like if you can find some meaning and empathy in the storytelling element, that can translate from maybe medium to medium, and hopefully maybe with a lucky break and enough rigor and perseverance, then maybe you can crack in somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, also my experience was kind of unusual, I think. I mean, Lee was just he really changed my life. But that's I as you said, I don't know if those kind of things exist that much anymore. I mean, and one of the problems with putting your work on the internet, I know people who do Substack. That's one way that people make money doing this is they have a Substack. But certainly a young person would know more about that than I would. They probably know a lot, tons more about how to make it in this market than I could ever tell them.
Well, aside from the fact that, back in the day when you submitted batches and there was like physical, someone going there in person or submitting, paper things, now it's electronic. How have your batches evolved over the years?
I think when I was younger, well, they were almost always about the city, or stuff like that, because that's where the only place I had lived. And, when I had kids, there were a lot more jokes about that. And I guess, Bob Mankoff, who was the cartoon editor before Emma Allen, uh, he said that some cartoonists, they work within the cartoon universe, and their subject matter is door jokes and conference rooms, and I don't know, the end of the world guys, and whatever genre jokes are popular at the time. And there's very little of their like day-to-day life in it. And then other people, their work is more autobiographical. I think I have I do both a little bit. But why did I bring this up? Oh, how have my batches evolved? So to me, the main of evolving is just that they reflect more, they have reflected my subject matter changes a lot. I mean, when my kids were little, did a lot of child related cartoons. Now my kids are older and I don't do so many, although I have done a couple about I have grandchildren now, so I've done a couple of those. But yeah.
Did you find that, as maybe sometimes some of your cartoons trended more personal, that you got more of a reaction to those?
Yeah, yes, but not always. I think the book I did about my parents that was extremely personal, and that got a lot of reaction. I do think that is a topic that people, it's sort of shoved to the side. People don't want to talk about it a lot. I think for a lot of reasons. First of all, because nobody wants to talk about like death. It's so gross and depressing. And the other thing is that, like so many things, the work of taking care of elderly people is generally women. Therefore, it's kind of like sort of put off to the side. It's like when I hear, I don't know, now I'm off on a different tangent, but when I hear particularly male scientists talk about extending the human lifespan, I want to just like take a frying pan and like crack them over the head. It's like, am I allowed to swear, by the way?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. Are you just fucking insane? Have you ever been with extremely old people? Do you know what this is about? Do you know that it's about like being in a place and surrounded by like underpaid women who are going to be taking care of your stupid old body? I mean, it's the work of people who really don't understand what old age is. I'm not saying that I completely do, because I'm not quite there yet. I have an aunt who's going to be 106 if she makes it on September 11th, and it looks like she is. Huh. So, and my parents died at 95 and 97. So, and a lot of my relatives, they were quite up there. She's the only one who's gotten to 105, almost 106, but it's not great, and she's in pretty good health, and she has, I'd say, 85% of her marbles, but it's not good. It's not good. So I don't know. So yeah, that book got a lot of attention, I guess.
Yeah, and I emailed Dana Jerry Mayer, who's she does some cartoons for the New Yorker. Has a wonderful book on creativity about called "Skip to the Fun Parts." It's just an awesome book. She's so funny. I was just like, hey, I'm going to talk to her. She just admires you so much. And I knew that. I'm like, hey, what would you like me to ask Roz? This might help. She sent me a couple questions, and I think they're really good. And she brought up how you're one of the few cartoonists who's made like the transition to draw covers as well. So, just for starters, like what makes a good New Yorker cover?
If only I were more articulate about stuff like this. Well, you see, I'm drawing, and then I get a feeling that it would look kind of nice on the cover. Yeah, I guess generally, but not always. It's nice to have like a single image thing, more than like a million little panels. But I have done a couple of covers that were sort of panelish.
Yeah, I think your latest one from a couple months ago maybe was kind of like a tic-tac-toe thing.
Yes, it was Hollywood Squares. That
Yeah,
except
yeah.
so yeah, so that clearly doesn't apply. Uh, yeah, so it's something that I think this is just such circular. How do you decide whether it's new? Because it's something that looks like it could be on a cover. So yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean, it's a feeling. It's an
sure.
instinct. You know.
Well, yeah, and then making that crossover is pretty rare. So how did you end up? What was maybe your first your first cover, and how did you make that crossover?
Oh, the first cover I did was not something I pitched as a cover. It was part of it was 1986, and I turned in my regular batch of cartoons, and it was a scientist, cartoon scientist, white coat, beard, glasses, the sort of
Yeah.
a shorthand for this is a scientist. And he has a chart and a pointer, and it's a chart of the evolution of ice cream. And at the top of the chart is a ball of vanilla ice cream, and then it branches off into like different sort of more branches of that original ball of vanilla ice cream. And, in the popsicles and cones and the little dish with a wooden spoon and all that banana split. That's more at the bottom of the chart when it breaks off into sects or whatever. And Lee said, Lee pulled it out and he said, he and Sean, I guess, we'd like you to try this as a cover. So that was my first one. And that, I guess, I felt like I had permission to then, if I had something that I thought would be a cover, to pitch it as a cover. So yeah, I don't know. I've never really, when people say about like creative work, like, did it take a lot of courage to do this and do that? I don't know. Maybe because I just found like childhood and adolescence so upsetting and terrible that, and even like the years at RISD, like, you get rejected and it's like, well, fuck you. Who cares? It's not like, courage to me is like people who, like firefighters or something. I mean, you could die. Even like being a surgeon, it's like you're operating, you're like, how do you do that? How do you take like an X-Acto knife or whatever they use and like cut into a person? It's like, how do you like open up somebody's brain? And if something goes wrong with a drawing, I just throw it in the garbage. So I don't know. I'm very excited often to just try something new and experiment and see if it works, and if I really like it, I'll submit it, and that's kind of it.
Mm. Well, yeah, and with excitement and experimentation, what are you seeing in the cartooning landscape? Trends you like, or just the kind of work being done out there that's putting a smile on your face.
There's so many people. There are tons of my fellow New Yorker cartoonists whose work I love. I'm collaborating actually with friend Jason Katzenstein. He's terrific.
I've got his book, Everything's
Everything
an
is
Emergency. I've got that right over there.
Book. It's so good. I love Emily Flake and Lars Kenseth, and of course Ed Steed and Liana Fink, and there's tons of people. But then there's the graphic novel world of Walter Scott and Gabrielle Bell and Keeler Roberts, and I know I'm leaving out like billions of people. I really love this medium. I think cartooning is an incredible medium. There aren't a lot of rules. You can really make it up. You can make it suit you, not, my mother used to talk about the Procrustean bed, and that's where like the person cuts off their legs to fit the bed. And that's actually, not such a great idea. You want the bed to fit the person. You don't want to cut off your legs to fit into the bed. So, and cartooning, maybe because there is so little money in it, it is such a not, uh, it's not a grown up job. I mean, it doesn't feel, I often feel like we are so much sitting at the children's table. I mean, and probably like poets feel it even more, you know, modern dance choreographer. I mean, these are the kind of jobs that it's competitive in a way, but really there's really um, you do it because you really like want to do it. You know, I don't know how I started off on this. Sorry.
Yeah. Well,
That's
it's
distract.
such a fun medium to digest, and it's kind of liberating in a way because there is some flexibility. I think I've heard the Simpsons creators call like their world like rubber band reality, where it's like they tether it to something real, but they can kind of bend it because it's animated, and so they can stretch things in a way. And I think that's true with with cartooning and graphic novels, even graphic nonfiction, is that you can kind of you can bend it just enough to suit your sensibility and to suit the storytelling, where
Yeah.
where it's not strict nonfiction, but it's still expressive in that way.
Yeah, well, I love that rubber band reality. That's great. I'm going to be thinking about that. But yeah, I mean, when you're putting together a project, when you're putting together a book, you're putting together a narrative, and it has to sort of have, a shape to it. And if you're working on it, you're the only one who knows how to do that. And maybe if you have a good editor, they can help you with it, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, and speaking of The Simpsons, yeah, Dana also said, be like, you got maybe I'm just fangirling here, but you got to ask Roz about The Simpsons and being on The Simpsons. So, like,
Oh
just
my
tell me
God.
about that experience.
That was like highlight of life because I love, love, love The Simpsons and always watched it. I remember when it was just the interstitial stuff on Tracy Ullman,
Oh wow, yeah,
and my kids when they were growing up, we watched it every night because I think it was on Channel 5 at like 7 o'clock. They ran it, and when The Simpsons at the beginning of the credits, the beginning of the show, when all the Simpsons would be running to the couch, me and my two kids, we would all run to the couch, and we had to be there. Then it was like so, and I was amazed because there were kids. Occasionally I would be asked to speak to kids at the school, and you cartoonist, come speak to the class. So I would ask like, who in the room loves cartoons? And me, and what cartoons do you like? Does anybody watch The Simpsons? And there would be inevitably one or two kids whose parents didn't let them watch The Simpsons, and this would just floor me, because to me it was such a misreading of what this show was. Oh God, it just used to just kill me because I just thought it was so great and so many wonderful, very moving things. And I mean, did you watch The Simpsons?
I did, and yeah, I was 9 years old, and when it debuted as a TV show, and yeah, I remember like those first 10 years of The Simpsons were extremely formative for me. That was my middle school and high school years. And to me, I still think it's the best. Maybe everyone who comes of age in a certain window of The Simpsons are like, no, that's the best window. But those first few years, my God, the writing was so good. The push and pull of the heartfeltness, but also the jokes and the gags, and how it graduated from Bart being kind of the central figure to kind of Homer's gaffes and everything. I don't know. It was
Yeah.
perfect at that time.
Oh,
Yeah, I came up.
absolutely.
My father
Absolutely.
did insist on watching it with me because some of the humor could be a bit crude and maybe a bit mature, but I think it's just because he desperately wanted to watch it too and found it hilarious.
Yeah. I never found them that South Park. I used to
Oh yeah.
watch with my son. And that was something that I felt better watching it with him. But we would laugh and laugh and laugh. I mean, because it was funny. But The Simpsons had a lot of heart, balanced with all these jokes. It wasn't like moron stuff. Like, I mean, I remember even as a kid or a slightly older kid, like a teenager, you'd watch some of these like shows that were pitched that had so-called heart, and it would just be like, this is so crappy, this is so corny, I cannot stand it. But there was one Simpsons episode where I remember it ended where I think that it was Bart and Principal Skinner. They were the two main characters. And I think Bart had misbehaved in some way. And then there was some kind of rapprochement between the two of them. But then and then it's like this heartfelt moment. And then, of course, they have a twist where, like, as Principal Skinner is walking away, Bart Simpson's tacks a piece of paper that says, "Kick me," to the back of him. Ha ha ha. But then the scene after that is as Bart is walking away, you see that Principal Skinner has taped something on the back of Bart which says, "Teach me." And
yeah.
it was just like, I mean, tears, and I thought, this is why this show is great, because it has both, both things.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and there was speaking about the heartfelt thing too, and I used to listen to the DVD commentary a lot too, especially when I was living alone. I was a sports writer and coming home late at night, and like listening to the DVD commentary of Simpsons episodes made it feel like I was watching it with like a group of friends.
yeah.
And in this one episode is when Homer found his mother, or his mother came back into the picture, and at the very end, he's sitting on the hood of his car looking at a starlit sky as his mother sped off out of his life. And is like extremely heartfelt and very kind of sad and morose. But the commentary, they were saying like they really had to fight to not have like house ads basically for the next show. Like, stay tuned for Drexel's class coming up at 8:30, because they really wanted that moment to hang there, and that they were successfully able to do it. But it just goes to that point of like, here's this really funny, sometimes over the top show, but then it really tugs at your heart.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was like practically like in tears, even thinking about this. I find it so moving.
Yeah, 100%. Well,
Yeah.
and Roz, you've got these really cool puzzles coming out, and a new calendar, and I think it's so great. Like, my wife and I love doing puzzles, so I can see us getting these when they come out. So just what is it meant to to have these puzzles coming out from Workman Publishing from your work?
Oh, I just thought I was so happy that they asked me to do this. And we often do them in the summer, not when we're home, if we go away or something like that. And we just put out the puzzle, and it's a very fun activity, especially if other people are over and maybe you've had a glass of wine or a gummy or whatever. And because you can also talk, while you're doing it. It's not like watching a movie where you have to, you're doing this and it's like, oh, I found an edge. I found the edge,
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's a very fun activity.
Yeah, how did you arrive at the two particular ones? It's kind of like the map of particular train that just goes all over the place, and then the other one, the infinity portrait. What was it about those that suggests like, oh yeah, these will make for good 1,000-piece puzzles?
Well, actually, Workman chose them. I believe they had given me, I have to think back. They gave me some choices of which ones, but these two I liked. And I think they would be fun to do. There's not too many areas of like, well, this is just the sky. It's half the puzzle is just sky.
Oh yeah,
So,
those are the worst.
yeah. No, this has, they're very colorful. There's lots of little parts. There's words, and words are always a good clue. And
Well, that's amazing. That's so cool. Well, Roz, as I bring these conversations out for a landing, I always just love asking the guests for a recommendation of some kind for the listeners. And that's just anything you're excited about that you want to share with the listeners. So I'd extend that to you as we bring our conversation down for a landing.
well, my husband and I just watched the movie Barry Lyndon for the first time, just a night or two ago. Actually, we
Okay.
watched it over 2 nights because it's like 4 hours, 3.5 hours long or something. It's Stanley Kubrick, who is just so great, of course, and loved the movie. Not what I expected. I thought it was going to be a slow sort of costume drama, but it's very funny and not at all dull or stately or anything like that. Yes, it does take place in like 1770s, or I think, but it's terrific. So highly recommend it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Roz, what a joy to have a conversation with you about your work, and I just thank you so much for carving out the time, and thanks for all the work you do. You always know when you're coming on a Roz Chast, a cartoon, and it's always a joy to just be entertained by your work. So just thanks for all you do.
Thank you, Brendan. This was great. Nice to talk to you.
Yes. Wasn't that great? Got to talk to Roz Chast. Roz Chast was here. Can you believe that? Pretty great stuff. Be sure you're checking out the show notes at brendanamara.com, hey, or follow the show on Instagram at Creative Nonfiction Podcast, and sign up for the newsletters. They're only once a month. Rage Against the Algorithm, the flagship, and then Pitch Club at welcometopitchclub.substack.com, which is turning out to be pretty popular and gaining more traction all the time. Get on board. So I was on this panel for Hippocamp a couple weekends ago, and I was the featured reader. And I was under the impression that I was going to be part of the panel discussion that involved primarily debut authors. There was some miscommunication with the moderator. So, they emailed the group to asking each one of us to provide talking points to contribute to the conversation. So I was like, okay, cool, put a lot of time in this. But I was never asked anything of worth. At one point I was asked about photos and how the title of my book came to be as time was running out. Only after did I realize that I was apparently only there to read. Again, it's a communication error, so whatever. No big deal. I bring this up because someone on the panel said their job wasn't to sell their book, it was to write it. And I think I may have put my Zoom hand up at this, but I was ignored. And this is all well and good, and maybe in a perfect world, your only job is to write and let other people sell. But make no fucking mistake. Your number one job is to write the book, but jobs 2 through 99 are to sell the fucking thing. It is your job to take this thing that you planted, nurtured, fertilized, pruned, and harvested, and bring it to market to celebrate it. Because if you don't, I'm here to tell you that nobody will. If you think your publisher is coming to save the day, they are not. Oh, you have a big 5 deal, so you're all set? 100% false. You will get a fancy press release on publisher stationery, but if you expect them to bend over backwards and sell you, nothing's going to happen. Now, if you're okay just writing books that get little to no attention and that's your jam, then fine, definitely don't sell. You get your kicks that way, cool. But let's not kid ourselves. Every single person who writes books cares about selling the most possible copies to the most amount of people. If you say otherwise, you are lying. So when I hear someone in a debut author speaking to aspiring authors saying it's not their job to sell, I consider that malpractice. There is a lot of unpaid work around the work we have to do. I'm not saying you have to live on social media, and I'm telling you right now, please do not live on social media. That's a way of seeming like you're working. But real work is writing columns and essays and newsletters and appearing on podcast after podcast and celebrating other people's work, of leaving 5-star reviews on Amazon and Goodreads for your peers, whether you love their book or not. Or copping out and saying it's not your job to sell the book is also kind of a way of passing the blame if it doesn't do as well as you'd hoped. You can point to your PR team or your publisher or your favorite bookstore and say, they didn't do their job. I did mine. They didn't hold up their end of the deal. It's a way of not taking accountability for the success or failure of your book. If the front runner doesn't sell, and it isn't, that's my fault. Jesus Christ. Lachlan and Kevin there. Anyway, Kevin seems to be getting better for those who know what was happening a couple weeks ago. She's still very much governor on her engine, still taking her out very gingerly for bathroom breaks. But we're starting to take her for 5-minute walks outside, flat ground. Anyway, in a perfect world, we get to publish our books and let someone else broadcast it. But that hasn't been the case for 15 years, maybe more, maybe ever. So if someone tries to tell you that you as the writer, that it's not your job to sell your book, smile and nod at some of the worst advice you just heard. So stay wild, CNFers. And if you can't do interview, see ya.